Right, I think it's high time for a Chinese motorcycle update. Let's talk about the state of play of the Chinese manufacturers, where they sit in the UK market, and also let's talk about the effect it's going to have on the legacy manufacturers. So I was actually an early adopter of a Chinese brand. I bought the Vosges 500 DSX back in 2021, made some videos about it, which nobody watched.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing!
Swap the Royal Enfield.
Oh, I didn't get to say goodbye to her then.
Oh, I know, that's a shame actually.
Oh my god.
It is cool, isn't it?
We're going around Croatia and Bulgaria on. Oh, can I get on?
Yeah.
Whoa, she's big.
It's a beast, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's really nice. I'm super happy.
Flex in the sunlight.
Because back then, the Chinese bikes were way less in the public eye, in the public thought, and I was actually drawn to this bike because I test rode it. I liked what I experienced on the test ride, and it was a great value proposition. It offered way more than the equivalent Honda at a bargain price. I had the centre stand, the TFT display, upside down forks, dual discs up front, and full aluminium luggage, all for about £5.5 grand. So it was a super bike, and it enabled me to go travelling, have adventures on, and really realised then that you could get huge bang for buck when you invested in one of the emerging brands. Since this time, the Chinese brands have gone from strength to strength, and for example, CF Moto sold 70 motorcycles in the whole of 2021. Yet in the first half of 2024, which is what the most recent figures allow, they sold 406. So you can see there's been an exponential increase in the sales of just one of the Chinese brands. You've also got bikes like Vosges, Cove, and then Morbidelli here, which has Italian heritage but is manufactured in China. Even the legacy media is coming on board with the publications like Ride and MCM, now including Chinese bikes in their group tests and writing articles on them. So up until probably 12-18 months ago, Chinese bikes weren't even included, and it was all the Japanese and European manufacturers. I've also noticed from the comment section of my own videos, which often feature Chinese made bikes, that people are actually getting on board with the brands, and they're recognising that they are beginning to build up a little bit more of a reputation for reliability, especially these new models we've got. And there's less of the general xenophobia or the general political commentary that used to come along with the fact that bikes were made in China. So if Chinese bikes are selling more and more, and the UK motorcycle market remains about the same, perhaps single-digit growth each year, that means that these brands are taking market share from the established brands. Yet, some of the established brands like Triumph and BMW are showing increases year on year in sales. And I think the reason for this is that these Chinese brands and the consumers that are interested in them are a sort of different subgroup of motorcyclists. They're the kind of bikers who see that you can get a lot of value and all the toys you want, everything under one headline price, and they're less interested in the badge on the tank. So if you think about your premium brand following like the Triumph, BMW and Ducati, those brands are going to have a very loyal, robust fan base that's going to support them as the Chinese bikes come into the market. I think this is why adventure bikes are the easy pickings, because these are more of a tool, whereas your sports bikes and your modern classics are kind of have a little bit of a more prestige, a bit of more character. It's a bit more about image. Image conscious biker buys into those categories of bike. On an adventure bike, it's essentially a tool to have an adventure. And if you can have that tool, which does exactly the same thing at 50% less cost, then why wouldn't you? Right, let's get to the interesting bit then. What is, or who are the manufacturers that are going to most lose out from the Chinese influx? It's probably the Japanese Big Four and KTM, which is quite ironic really, because the Japanese Big Four came in and trounced the British motorcycling industry back in the late 70s. Why are they most vulnerable? Probably because they offer a similar thing to what the Chinese bikes are offering. It's a value proposition, isn't it? It's you get this much performance, tech, reliability for an X amount of money. The only problem is those Japanese bikes are not made in Japan anymore, so they don't have that kudos. And the Chinese bikes are offering exactly the same equation. It's just more favourable than the Japanese equation. So if you think about also direct competitors, in Yamaha's case, the Tenere is under fire from, I mean, this bike here has more capacity, more power, more tech than a Tenere, and it's cheaper. But if you also think about the Moto Morini Escape 700, that's manufactured in China. That is gunning for the Tenere. Tenere is one of Yamaha's best-selling bikes, and all the Chinese street bikes like the 800 NK, they're going to eat into sales of the MT-09 and the MT-07, that kind of thing. And when we consider Honda, I think Honda probably got hit early on by the likes of Vosges with the 500 DSX, kind of taking down the CB500X with more technology, a little bit more power, and a cheaper price point. Honda also have the Africa Twin. That's going to be like nipped at by bikes like this, and also the Vosges, and not so much Cove, but all the heavyweight adventurers, as they start to come through, Africa Twin's going to feel the pinch. Kawasaki, well, CF Moto does a 650 range that we can see next to us, that in all intents and purposes is the same engine, but more power than the old 650s that Kawasaki is still using. So the Versys, think of that, but also the Rebel, not the Eliminator, what's the other one? The Vulcan 650. When the cruisers come through with this enhanced 700cc, essentially ER6 engine, just takes a chunk out of Kawasaki's pie, basically. Suzuki, they are, I feel bad for Suzuki because they're also a value manufacturer. Suzuki always priced stuff really good, and you had a nice balance of the tech you needed, the performance, and a little bit of flair. But if you think of the V-Strom, the 1050, that's banging the Morbidelli sights. Even Royal Enfield, to a certain extent, the Himalayan 450 launch was a little bit muted because CF came and beat them to the punch with the 450 MT, and everyone went mad for that bike because it had more technology, like adjustable front shocks, the TFT was better, general like wind protection was better, the engine had more power and a little bit of more character. Everybody kind of went for that 450 MT, and I think that was to the detriment of the Himalayan. Right, so who's going to do well? I think probably Triumph, because their range is based on essentially modern retros and style and nostalgia. So I think they're in a good place. They also are competitive at the lower end with the small capacities. Triumph are just doing really well at the moment. I think that they're going to survive probably longer than most. I would say also like the high-end brands like Ducati and probably BMW. BMW do have an adventure bike range, but they also have this kind of premium feel that kind of everybody wants to be a BMW owner. And China isn't easily going to be able to replicate that kind of brand loyalty. Everybody knows the GS is the best, and whilst it's expensive, you also get some kind of kudos, like at Olympic, you do get kind of a kudos for being a 1300 GS owner. I think KTM are going to struggle because they essentially did a deal with CF Moto, a technology transfer, and all it ended up doing was highlighting that you could get an 800 MT for £6 grand, £6.5 grand, and that was basically a different version of the KTM 790, just saving you money, but it was exactly the same technology. If anything, you had more kit on the 800 MT than you do on the KTM. Another potential victim of China is the likes of Mutt. Anyone who was importing Chinese components, assembling them in the UK and then pretending they're British, usually those bikes aren't that to a high standard. Whereas if you buy something that's designed in China, manufactured in China, marketed and exported out of China, the whole package is a little bit more refined because they've had control the whole way. If you just get someone doing a parts bin special and lashing it together, and that's like Mutt and unfortunately a little bit of Sinis, I think these brands are going to come unstuck as the actual Chinese companies start competing again with the ones that are assembled in this country. Right, this 800 NK from CF has just come back in off a demo ride, so I thought I'd bring it in, close the video out on this bike, which is actually quite peached, to be honest. I quite like the little sporty naked, and it is a good bike. It's a really good bike. Talking of demo rides, interestingly, these three bikes, the 700 MT, the Morbidelli over there, and the NK have all got the demo plate on the back, because today people have taken out all of these bikes and the little CLC that I had earlier. I've put that back, but someone took that out. So that's anecdotally that I've come up here on a Saturday and everybody's taking out these bikes on test rides. If you're considering one yourself, then there's a few things to consider. There are obviously savings to be had, so you can get one of these bikes for a couple of grand under the Japanese competitor price, but you've got to consider a couple of things like the after-sales support with parts and servicing. Generally, any of the bikes imported by MotoGP that's your Vosges, your Morbidelli, your Keyway, you're set because they are a huge organisation with a very long history of managing and delivering parts supply and servicing across all of their dealerships for these kind of emerging brands. They did it for Royal Enfield for a hell of a long time, and actually nursed Royal Enfield from sort of 2016 days when they were a little bit unheard of, a little bit of an odd manufacturer, to the amazing, now famous, kind of iconic brand that Royal Enfield is here in the UK at least. So you've got to consider that. You've also got to consider your potential depreciation of a bike after you bought it if you want to offload it very quickly. That happens to all brands though. People think that Chinese bikes depreciate further, and I think that it's not entirely fair. I think all new bikes take a massive hit as soon as you take them out of the showroom. There's a few bikes that are perhaps high-end models or rare in that particular option spec, or they didn't sell a lot, or there's a high demand for them. It's usually the exception, not the rule, that you get a bike that commands a strong Part X value when you go back into the dealer. So if you do fancy going into this thing with your eyes wide open and getting on one of these bikes, there's savings to be had, but there's also, it's not just about the price. The bikes themselves are actually great bikes. So for example, perfect touring bike, middleweight. This thing is more power than you could ever want on a road bike, blasting around the countryside. You could have great fun. And then that over there, that's your long distance workhorse, V-twin character, 2-up, full luggage, touring, no problem at all. So there's kind of a bike for everyone. We're going to start to see whether the Chinese get into the sporty and the cruiser market. Obviously you've got the CLC, which is gone now, but that'll be the thing that they're going to break into last. I personally love the bikes. I've always had a soft spot for bikes that give good value and allow people to get into motorcycling for a small amount of money. What the legacy brands are going to have to do is adapt or die, unfortunately. I think you've seen this with Honda, and it first came with the CB500X that we talked about earlier. They saw what Vosges was doing, and all of a sudden they updated that bike to have Showa upside down forks and twin discs up front, later updated to a TFT. So they really improved it so that it couldn't be competed on spec. Honda also then brought out the Hornet 750 at 6,999 a couple of years ago in 2023. Brilliant bike, kind of competitive with this, but at the same-ish price point. And then you get the Honda badge and the good value. More recently, Honda have done it again with the Hornet 1000. That is, I think, 8,999 for the normal one, and basically 999 or 10 grand for the SP. So there you get in 150 horsepower, Hornet like kudos, Honda reliability, and all that, like the dealership support, all the stuff that goes around the outside. So Honda are kind of saying, well, look, we've seen what you're doing, and we can do it as well, and we've still got that kind of Honda goodness, as it were. So I think the other brands are going to have to do similar. They can't continue to put out bikes that are 12, 13 grand when there's bikes that are 8, 9 grand in the same space and with the same features. So it's going to be interesting. It's a great time to be a motorcyclist. It's a great time to have this hobby, have a passion for it, because the bikes that are coming through are just going to get better and better from all parts of the world because of the market pressure that China's putting on the rest of them. Right, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. I will read all the comments, try and reply to as many as I can. And now I'm going to have a little bit of fun, post-video ride. I'm going to take the NK out and just have a bit of a blast, see how I get on. So I will see you in the next one.